And now the news continues in West Africa, where the Independent National Electoral Commission in Nigeria has commenced collation of rerun election results across states where elections were concluded in the country. By and rerun elections were slated for 80 local government areas across 26 states of the Federation. The elections were conducted to fill vacancies in not less than 3 senatorial districts, 17 federal and 28 state constituencies spread across 80 local government areas. States where the elections were held include Ebonyi, Yobe, Kebbi, Lagos, Ondo, Taraba, Benue, Borno, Kaduna, Plateau, Akwa Ibom, Anambra, among others. In Lagos, we told you that the result has been announced. And then we now tell you that in Plateau State, North Central Nigeria, the rerun election was held in all the local government areas that made up or makes up the Plateau North Central District to elect the senator and representative of the Bassa Jos North Federal Constituency. Let's also tell you that the Independent National Electoral Commission has suspended ongoing rerun elections in some constituencies and polling units due to disruptions and irregularities. INEC National Commissioner and Chairman, Information and Voter Education Committee, Sam Olumekun, made this known amidst the ongoing process in 26 states and 80 local governments across the affected states. He listed the affected areas as Ekononi Federal Constituency in Akwa Ibom State, saying suspension of elections in 2 units, namely Village Hall Edemura 003 in Ini local government area and Village Hall in Biabong Ikot Udo 003 in Ikono local government area, where all election materials were carted away by hoodlums. In Enugu State, the exercise was suspended in all 8 polling units of Enugu South 1 State Constituency, where the original result sheets were not available for inspection by voters before the commencement of the polls. Similarly, in Kunchi Tansawa State Constituency in Kano State, in all 10 polling units in Kunchi local government area due to invasion, vandalization and disruption by thugs. Now, meanwhile, the Independent National Electoral Commission has announced plans to conduct fresh elections in 18 polling units in the rerun elections for Plateau North Senatorial District election and Bassa Jos North Federal Constituency. The resident electoral commissioner in the state, Dr. Oliver Gundu, disclosed this while speaking with journalists in Jos on Saturday.
Our result sheet, PU result sheet, is mixed. So when I get there as a resident electoral commissioner, I found out that after the ORAC activation last night and the proper badging moving to PU, the SPOs presented all the materials. But I found out that to moving this morning, I found out that it's missing. So in the election, just like I said earlier, if we are to conduct election, or we are conducting the election, we have to have alternative means. Explain the political party, then in that particular polling unit. That's where it will be a problem if we are unable to present a replacement sheet of the result sheet. It will be the problem. But now we have a replacement result sheets. Let us go and continue the election. But some political parties insisted that unless that particular one that INEC produced, that we have to find it. And we'll start contacting these people. If you look at that place, it's filled by quite number of people. And those places staff, some of them became afraid in order to undo the threats, in order to not cause them more harm. After issuing the replacement sheets, I communicate them to the commission. And it's my duty as resident electoral commissioner to update the national office, the situation in the states. So, and they are also seeing it. The media have already carried it. So what we do, commission look at it and put that place on hold.
And that was the resident electoral commissioner in Enugu State, Chukwuemeka Chukwu, confirming the indefinite suspension of the rerun in Enugu South Urban. Meanwhile, in Plateau State, Nyamgai, Commissioner for Land Survey and Town Planning, while speaking at Kabong Tudun Wada Ward, says the Independent Electoral Commission has compromised the process of the election.
Here is short of saying INEC has compromised this process, because we discovered that in some polling units, the ballot papers for Senate were brought, and the ones for House of Reps, they didn't bring them. And we will ask questions. The polling agents, are they not supposed to supervise and ensure that the papers are complete before moving to the various polling units? And they couldn't give us any satisfactory answer. Apart from that, there are polling units that they didn't come at all. For example, 092, we didn't see anybody. So for us, honestly, INEC must come clean and ensure that the correct thing is done, because the people actually came out in mass to exercise their democratic rights. And from what is happening, honestly, for us in Kabontudun Wada, this election is highly compromised. And we call for INEC to do the needful to ensure that those who are enfranchised are given the opportunity to exercise their vote.
Meanwhile, the Chief of Staff to President Bola Tinubu, Femi Gbajabiamila, took time out of the election to address Nigerians in Lagos State, southwest Nigeria. Femi Gbajabiamila assured Nigerians that the benefits of fuel subsidy removal would be reaped soon. He spoke after casting his vote at polling unit 014, Ward 08 at Elizabeth Fowler Memorial School in Surulere, Lagos State, in the House of Representatives by-election in the constituency on Saturday. According to him, the economic hardship faced by Nigerians was due to missing fundamentals missed by the past administration.
Clearly, Nigerians are going through economic hardship. Same thing is going on in other parts of the world. Nigeria is not isolated. It's even in the most advanced democracy, these things are happening. The shocks that are being received left, right, center, from the east, from the west, from the south, things that are universal. But we're concerned with Nigeria. Let's forget about the other countries. We're concerned with Nigerians, and I want to encourage people. It's been, around about 6-7 months of this government. The gestation period is about now. So moving forward, I believe that things will begin to take a turn. Like has always been said, it's for it to get better. Some people will say it has to get bad. Because of the fundamentals that we're missing in the first place. It is those fundamentals.
The Chief of Staff, in his reaction to insecurity, urged Nigerians to support the president and his administration rather than pointing fingers and making negative criticisms. He stated that security remained everyone's concern, but assured that the president is deeply concerned and at the forefront of it all.
Everybody. The president and this administration is at the forefront. Security is about everybody. You need full cooperation. Go to America, go to Germany, go to South Africa, go to Ghana, you find the same thing. But for as long as you have somebody at the saddle who knows what he's doing, who is concerned, which the president is, I believe that this also will be a thing of the past. It's something of concern to me and to everybody. But I believe all of us should be our brother's keepers. We should all check ourselves, support the president, support the administration. When you have insecurity, look at America, for example. There's insecurity every day in America. But people don't criticize the government. What they do is they rally around. When 9/11 happened, that was when you saw that there was a blur, the lines between the parties were blurred. Everybody came together. There was a cohesion in the country, a national cohesion, to support that administration of George Bush at the time, both Democrats, Republicans.
Earlier, public affairs analyst Chizoba shared his thoughts on the overall process.
So as I read the news and watch your footages, whether our political class actually wanted democracy in the first place. Because like Professor Claudake of blessed memory said in one of his works, he said Nigeria is running democracy without Democrats. In 10 polling units of Kano State, thugs took charge and prevented the election from holding. Who sponsored those talks? Is it not the politician? In Enugu, 8 polling units, no result sheets. How was that missed? Just 8 polling units. So, and then in 2 polling units in Akwa Ibom, where there was violence. And you hear of huge budgetary allocation to holding this follow ritual called election. INEC itself needs to get its ass together. Because I'm worried. The issue of missing results, the REC should take responsibility. It's the man on ground. It should have asked the head of operations to ascertain that all the materials are in order and none is missing. Look, for there to be a rerun again, now there's going to be rerun in Kano, in 2 polling units in Akwa Ibom, and in 8 polling units in
To discuss the election further, we are joined in the studio by Andrew Mwanta, immediate past Commissioner for Information in Edo State. Thank you so much for joining us on the news.
Yeah, good evening. Thank you for having me, and good evening to Nigerians at home.
So let's start from the reaction and the concerns shared by our previous guest, Chizoba, talking about, Enugu, where result sheets were missing. In some areas, there were violent acts of thuggery where election materials were stolen or taken. And of course, in Akwa Ibom, Enugu, and Kano State, we witnessed some sort of violence in these areas. So what are your thoughts on this? What is your assessment of the way INEC has conducted these by and rerun elections?
Yeah, thank you. It's quite unfortunate that as it stands, INEC appears not to be ready to conduct elections, just rerun elections that are not as cumbersome or as complicated as maybe the general elections we had, last year. It's quite unfortunate that we still hear cases of INEC not bringing the right materials. This is just an isolated, situation of just few polling units across the 26 states where these elections took place. And not just those 3 states of Akwa Ibom, Enugu, and Kano. We just heard now that Plateau, elections, they were postponed. I think the INEC chairman should do some soul searching. If he does not have the capacity to continue as INEC chairman, he should throw in the towel. After all, the election he organized last year, Nigerians are still asking if that was an election. And I think the buck stops at his table. There's need for a turnaround in INEC. This is a complete sham, a situation where people can easily tell who the winners will be before the election. And of course, the usual large turnout, we didn't see it in these rerun elections. There was this case of voter party. And we failed to realize that what drives democracy is sovereignty. Just as, some scholars will argue, the oil that lubricates the wheels of democracy is sovereignty. And where does the Constitution situated? Section 14 of our Constitution says, sovereignty belongs to the people, from whom government derives all their power and authority. So it's very unfortunate. My fear is that if we don't get it right, because we don't have any other government that we can operate outside democracy. It is what Nigerians have embraced. So if we must get it right, I think our electoral process, we have to rejig INEC. It's quite unfortunate. These are just, and there will be off-season elections like in Edo, of course, were to have congresses, the PDP was to have their congresses today in Edo State. But because of this Rerun election, they had to move it forward to tomorrow. And of course, APC will be having a direct primaries kind of election on the 17th, whereby every member of the party across the various polling units will come out to vote for their desired candidates. And I think they're already having some internal schism between, both PDP and the APC. So for me, I think I'm worried as a Nigerian that democracy is not bringing out those basic dividends of allowing people to come out fully to exercise their franchise. It's very unfortunate.
Yes, I'm talking about the franchise given to people for them to exercise that. Let's look at the issue of Togri and snatching of ballot box, despite the fact that security provision was made in these 26 states where elections were meant to have been held or were held. So why is it that Nigeria's politics, an election, why is it that it has not grown past the issue of violence, ballot box snatching, and voter intimidation? Why?
I think if you ask that simple question, and I'll give you a simple answer, it is a lack of preparation of INEC. During the general elections, we used to have a full complement of security agencies. Is it that the security agents were not there, or were they not mobilized? It's a big question. Because if we allow thugs to reign terror on isolated elections like this, it therefore means that the off-season elections like the one we have in Edo September this year will have the same thing. So I think there's need for closer collaboration between INEC and various security agencies. Knowing fully well that we have thugs, why can't we rein in the military? Why can't we bring in the military into this kind of situation? They should be on standby. Because these thugs, it is the way they view the environment, that is how they operate. Except the government is complicit in this. So I think there's need for closer collaboration because the Edo election, the kind of message we are getting is not very pleasant. Even the fact that APC will be organizing, direct primaries, most of the aspirants, they're already, shouting fire and brimstone. And I'm sorry to say that the senator representing Edo North, the former national chairman of my great party, there's this feeling that, in some quarters, that he wants to impose a candidate. So my fear is that we don't have, a situation where there will be violence during that direct election because it will take the tone of a general election situation where all the members will come out to vote. So I think the security agency should be ready for February 17th when there will be direct primaries in Edo State so that we don't have a recurrence of what happened in Akwa Ibom, Enugu, Kano, and Plateau State.
Okay, let's now look at, let's just quickly look at the cost of processing elections generally in Nigeria. Now, in 1999, because we're actually looking for how to make election better in Nigeria. So in 1999, INEC presented a budget of 1.5 billion naira. In 2011, 42 billion naira was earmarked. 2015, 108.8 billion naira. 2019, 242.2 billion naira. 305 billion naira gulped election processes in 2023. Now, when you look at the cost of prosecuting election in Nigeria, you discover that by the time you compare it with other countries, you discover that it's on the high side. So why do we expend much when it comes to prosecuting election in the country, but then the end results, by the time we get the results coming in, it seems as though it's not a true reflection of the will of the people. How do we beat it down and still achieve credible elections in the country?
Yeah, thank you. I'll start by saying that there's nothing too big a cost to sustain democracy. But the countries you refer to, countries like South Africa, countries like America, Britain, those are democracies that have embraced electronic means of voting or system of voting in the truest sense of the word. And I think that is what Nigerians must do. First, we must ensure that our internet penetration is right, because if we don't get that right, we'll continue to have a recurrence of situations where the machines would not work, even if you have the full complement of electronic voting and you don't have the necessary network or the bandwidth required for these machines to work. So as such, I think there's a whole lot we can do in the area of ICT. But I think, too, the reason why elections are quite expensive in Nigeria is the number of hands we deploy into elections. The fact that you involve university lecturers, you involve security agencies. And when we prepare for elections, it's as if we are going to war. And I think it's about the leadership. The leadership should send the right message. You find that it is only when you have a government of the day that you, like I give you an example, the local government elections in Nigeria, it is the state governors that call the shots. They are the ones that determine everything. So you don't call that an election. So at the local government level, we don't have democracy at that level. If there's no state situation, a situation where PDP won all the elections, that is not democracy. It is not democracy.
Well, of course, we know that talking about cost of elections, we know that by-elections has to do with probably if a candidate that has been elected dies or is deformed or is in a situation where he will not be able to perform his role. But then when it comes to run elections, it has to do with court orders and jurisdictions and, of course, judgments being handed down either by the tribunal or the courts, whatever the case may be. But then we've seen discrepancies in judgments, most especially looking at the 2023 general elections, at the presidential election, the governorship election, and all whatnot. Now, what do you think the role of the judiciary should be when it comes to adjudicating justice in electoral matters so that we don't keep having a repeat of elections that still bears down on additional costs on INEC and on government?
Yeah, thank you. Before I answer that question, I'll quickly correct the impression. The rerun elections we've had situations where people were appointed, like the chief of staff to the president. So that also created some vacancies. And that is why, even for ministers that were appointed, it created some vacancies. True. So having said that, I think there's need for us to also look at the role of the judiciary. The judiciary's role is not to decide for Nigerians who should be the right person to occupy such offices. But it is this problem of political parties not following their own internal rules. Like in the case of Plateau, where the issue of whether the courts can intervene in the internal affairs of a political party. Of course, the Court of Appeal had laid down the decision that congresses were not organized, and as such, because Congress was not organized, you didn't have the structure to have organized valid primaries. That was the decision of the Court of Appeal. But of course, when the matter now went to the Supreme Court, there was a different view. So I think the call for us to have a constitutional court, becomes a recurring issue. A country like Malawi, recently we heard how the election of a particular president was nullified. And again, the time within which this matter should be resolved should be before inauguration. So I don't believe that we should be having post-inauguration litigation. And that is why we have this kind of situation, where somebody is already in the seat as a member of parliament or occupying the office of governor or president, then the person is now removed. And it brings us back to this issue of Rerun. So everything about elections, everything about litigation should be done before these persons occupy, their position. And I think there's need for us to, reform the laws or, amend our, existing, electoral act and as it relates to the provisions of, the Constitution too, because at the end of the day, should these matters end at the Court of Appeal? I don't think it should end at the Court of Appeal. We have a situation where the Court of Appeal gave a judgment and the Supreme Court gave something almost directly opposite what the Court of Appeal gave. So all election petitions should terminate at the Supreme Court, not at the Court of Appeal, because you're having a case of double standards. The Supreme Court judgment favored the governor of Plateau. That same judgment that favored the governor of Plateau, the Court of Appeal gave an opposite decision. And I think it creates confusion. There was really a time where there was protest by these lawmakers that because of the Supreme Court decision that they want to assume their seat. And that is anarchy. It breeds anarchy. So I think the National Assembly has a very major role, particularly now that they are talking of, amending the Constitution. So some of all these provisions, it is not out of place for the National Assembly to create a special court, the Constitutional Court that will deal with all election petitions, as you have it in Malawi and other African countries. All right.
Andre Manta, thank you so much for talking to us at this time.
Always a pleasure to be here.
You're watching NC Continental Prime. We now link up with our news correspondents in Plateau and Delta states to give us updates on the by and rural elections in those states.
In some of the wards visited, voter apathy was witnessed, while some others had a meaningful turnout.
I'm expecting to see people coming out to vote. Desperate that people are angry, but that's not the best solution. We have to come and vote for our right.
I was very disappointed with the population. People are not turning out.
Whoever wins today's rerun will win the person the best. And I hope that all litigations in court will stop from this by-election today. And I believe that people will be happy for what they have voted for. Well, you know, people are provoked, and we have individual differences. The way you feel is not the way I feel. But we urge that people should come out to vote, because these ballots are printed by taxpayers' money. They shouldn't be wasted. So they should exercise patience and come out to vote.
That the election is very, very peaceful. People are happy casting their own votes, and I will believe and trust in God that the election is going to end peacefully.
At the 052 polling unit in Rockhaven, voters were disappointed as electoral officials had just about 100 voting materials for over 1,700 eligible voters in the unit. This created some tension.
They are not saying anything actually that's going to vindicate us. Because right now it's looking as if we are the ones that have used the ballot for our own selfish gains. And most of them now are removing their hands off it, and they're saying that they gave us complete materials.
Some irregularities were also observed in some areas.
Honestly, what we have witnessed here is short of saying INEC has compromised this process, because we discovered that in some polling units, the ballot papers for Senate were brought, and the ones for House of Reps, they didn't bring them. And we will ask questions. The polling agents, are they not supposed to supervise and ensure that the papers are complete?
It is hoped that the number of issues witnessed will not be significant enough to affect the final result of the polls. The exercise was generally peaceful across the areas visited, while security agents were on the ground to maintain order and restriction of movement as announced by the police command in the state. Recall that the PDP were excluded from the contest as a consequence of various court orders stating that the party lacks the structure in the state. In Jos for News Central, I am Chizoba Anionwe.
At about 8:30 a.m., INEC staff and materials have arrived at the various polling units visited in Ethiope West, with security operatives moving around the areas to avoid any breakdown of law and order. At Ward 7 Unit 001, 002, 003 and 014, the turnout of voters seemed encouraging, unlike Ward 7 Unit 019. Voter apathy was also noticed at Ward 8 Unit 003.
So far, you can see the presence of security men here, and the INEC officials, they are just coming in. They are making preparation for the process.
The election is not going to be crowd. You can see the field now. There's no voters, just those that is a returning officer, party agent that is on ground.
So far, so good. It's a good one, and we've never had it this peaceful before. And it has been smooth all day. And I strongly believe all through the election it will be smooth.
The State Resident Electoral Commissioner, who monitored the exercise in Ogara, administrative headquarters of Ethiope West local government area, described the election as peaceful in both Borutu and Ethiope West. He said there was no beavers malfunction, commended security operatives for being professional, and voters who came out to vote.
Yeah, and I must say that I'm very happy with what I've seen here. Number one, there are no complaints about the beavers. The beavers are all working. There are no shortages of materials, and the security agencies are all here doing their work. The voters are happy because they are certain that they are going to vote, since there are no shortage of materials. And I'm happy also for the turnout. The report we got from British is that voting is ongoing and the place is very peaceful.
At the end of voting, sorting and counting of results, member representing Ethiope East West Federal Constituency in the National Assembly commended INEC security agencies for the success of the election.
We're grateful that there were no violence, at least from what I heard in Ward 7 so far. My advice to the people is to be patient and watch democracy, play out. At the end of the day, it's usually better to wait for the INEC to finish their job and announce who the winner is.
Thereafter, attention shifted to the INEC head offices of the two local government areas where the declaration of the winner will be made. In Ogara, for News Central, I'm Austin Azu.
NC Continental Prime continues in Senegal, where President Macky Sall on Saturday announced the indefinite postponement of the presidential election scheduled for February 25, just hours before official campaigning was due to start. In an address to the nation, Sall said he signed a decree abolishing the previous measure that sets the date as lawmakers investigate two Constitutional Council judges whose integrity in the election process has been questioned. Sall says it will begin an open national dialogue to bring together the conditions for a free, transparent, and inclusive election. It is the first time a Senegalese presidential election has been postponed. A November 2023 decree signed by Sall fixed the election for February 25 with 20 candidates in the running, but without two major opposition figures.
J'ai signé le décret 2024-106 du 3 février 2024, abrogeant le décret 2023-2283 du 29 novembre 2023 portant convocation du corps électoral. Pour ma part, mon engagement solennel à ne pas me présenter à l'élection présidentielle reste inchangé.
Now let's bring you today's business news.
In business, the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, has denied reports that it is considering a policy to convert foreign currencies in private domiciliary accounts of citizens to naira to stabilize the national currency, which earlier this week recorded its worst performance in history. Acting Director of Communications at the CBN, Sidi Ali Makama, made the disclaimer in a press statement released today, 3rd of February 2024. Recall that in the last few days, the naira recorded its worst performance in history, selling at 1,500 naira per dollar. In response to the deteriorating condition of the Nigerian naira, the Central Bank of Nigeria issued a directive for all banks to sell their excess foreign exchange holding. In response to the deteriorating condition of the Nigerian naira, the Central Bank of Nigeria issued a directive to all banks to sell their excess foreign exchange holding within 24 hours or face sanctions. Standard & Poor's S&P, a global rating agency, has affirmed its B-/B long and short-term foreign and local currency sovereign credit ratings on Nigeria. According to a statement from the rating firm on Friday, it also affirmed its NGBBB+/NGA2 long and short-term Nigeria national scale ratings. It added that the outlook is stable. Last August, it revised its outlook on Africa's biggest economy to stable from negative, citing the government's recent reforms, which the agency believes could benefit the country's growth and fiscal outcomes if delivered. And in Ghana, Mark Badu Obuoge, the CEO of the Ghana National Chamber of Commerce and Industry, GNCCI, has expressed dissatisfaction with the pace at which firms are failing as a result of the multiple levies levied against them. Badu Obuoge said members of the chamber are left with no option than to lay off workers due to the economic challenges affecting their operations. Speaking to Ghana's PM Express, he said employers are not happy with the current state of the economy. He, however, called for the intervention of government to aid in reducing the cost of operations to ensure sustainability of businesses. And finally, in Tunisia, Tunisia's central bank has kept the key interest rate unchanged at 8%. The bank made the announcement on Friday, adding it was watching for any potential repercussions that may result from a government request for direct funding from the bank. The government requested exceptional direct funding from the central bank worth $7 billion or $2.25 billion to fill a deficit in the year's budget, given the scarcity of external finance, three lawmakers said last week. Economists have warned that the move could lead to rising inflation and weigh on the value of Tunisia's currency. And that's business news at this hour. Thank you for watching. I am Perpetua Fasami Peter. The news continues shortly. Bye for now.
Talking sports now, it was a dramatic finish to a quarterfinal clash between host Côte d'Ivoire and Mali. Mali took the lead, and just when the Malian thought they had crossed the finish line, the Elephants of Côte d'Ivoire bounced back to ensure regulation time ended 1 goal apiece. In the extra time of the encounter, it took Omar Diakite's 120th minute goal to seal the comeback win for the host nation. And now joining us is Favor Itoa, who is currently in Côte d'Ivoire. Favor, good evening to you. How noisy is it currently right there in Côte d'Ivoire, having seen the team come from behind to win Mali in that particular bash?
Very noisy. Bonsoir to you, Lekon. I mean, right here in Abidjan, from the views you can see behind me, cars passing, fans celebrating the progress of Ivory Coast into the semi-finals of the Africa Cup of Nations. Against all odds, they got a red card in the first half, and they played with 10 men for up to 120 minutes, and then they were not perturbed by what happened. They kept pushing, and the fans also behind them right there at the Yamoussoukro Stadium, and they were able to get the very best of Mali and progress into the semi-finals. Don't forget, just about some weeks ago, they qualified as the best third-place team, and now they are into the semi-finals. History has been made right here in Abidjan, Côte d'Ivoire. And away from here, of course, in Bouaké, celebration continues, but of course, it's all about Ivory Coast at the moment.
So that particular comeback win was huge for the host nation and fans. Do you think that they deserved it, knowing how well Mali fought to keep, of course, that game together? And of course, what lessons do you think they learned from the group stage up to this point that is keeping them, of course, going forward?
All right, for me, I think it was a deserved win. The way they played after conceding the first goal, they kept pushing. They didn't look as if they were playing with 10 men. And they had to also correct their mistakes. They were very, very dogged in defending. They kept pushing more men forward. Seko Fofana was also instrumental. Not forgetting Adingra, who was introduced later on into the game. And then the 12th man of the day, the fans at the Bouaké Stadium were very, very wonderful on the day. They kept chanting their names, pushing, ensuring that the team go and get a goal. And the way the goals came, it came from an open play. And for Mali, they went back to defend. They didn't come outside to play like they played in the first few minutes of the game. So it was all about the Ivory Coast team knowing that they have to just go forward. They have to go for a kill. Like I say in Pidgin, or die or die. So that was what they did. And they went all the way to get that particular goal. And now they have progressed into the semi-finals. So for Ivory Coast, I think they learned one thing. Another opportunity should not be taken for granted. That was what they learned. And they also learned how not to behave the way they behaved in the first few matches of the competition, which of course saw them concede goals in the group stage against Equatorial Guinea, and not forgetting also Guinea-Bissau, going all the way to the round of 68 and the quarterfinals.
So finally, before I let you go, Favor, now do you think that Côte d'Ivoire is a serious title contender at this particular tournament? And of course, the fracas that happened at the end of the match, do you think that could put a dent on African football?
Well, I don't think so, because of course, in football, in the world, we see tempers fly, we see adrenaline rush here and there, players not being able to manage their emotions. But one thing is certain, there's a body called CAF, Confederation of African Football, and their job is not just to organize tournaments, but also to ensure that discipline is instilled in the game of football. So we'll wait to see what happens after the game, especially from the Mali players. They did not represent themselves in a professional manner. They decided to take laws into their hands, but wait to see the investigation and see what CAF will do. But then for Côte d'Ivoire, we have to also take them seriously. I mean, three things are working for them. They are the defending champions. They are, of course, not defending champions, I beg your pardon. They are the host of the competition. They are also, they've also shown courage. They've also shown character since the exit of their coach, the foreign coach. So there's a lot of things working for them. There's a new coach at the moment, an interim coach, in as much as he's their assistant coach, a homegrown coach. That is also working for them. But then, they are not so convincing, like the Nigerian side, with what we see so far. But of course, a lot of persons have already started tipping Nigeria and Cote d'Ivoire for the finals. But wait to see how the semi-finals go. Trust me, there will be no sleeping tonight in Abidjan because, of course, the fans, residents in Abidjan, are looking for venues to go have parties.
Well, I hope you grab your rest and grab your sleep fever too, because I know it's going to be a long day going down to the final of the game. But thank you so much for sharing the updates with us.
Thank you very much for having me, Lekon. Bonne nuit.
And that is the size of our package on the news tonight. Don't forget to send your eyewitness report to the WhatsApp number and email on your screen. And you can follow us on News Central TV. That is at News Central TV. You can also watch News Central live on DSTV channel 422, Star Times channel 274, Avo TV, and YouTube. Many thanks for watching. I am Lekon Onabanjo.